And we've seen them stumble a bit when they have these big leads. We saw it against the Raiders and they lost. We saw it against the Cowboys when they were up 28-6. The final score was 28-25. The Bucs tried their damnedest last night to get back into it. And it was that weird play, the one mistake, the one glaring blunder, the backward pass that got recovered by the Bucs. Initially, it looked like it was a touchdown, but Isaiah Likely had his hands on the defender's back before his knee was up. That was a hell of a run, and the Bucs still cashed in with a touchdown, and that's what got you thinking, hey, maybe the Ravens are going to let their foot off the gas again, and they slammed the door on the next drive and extended the lead. And even though it still wasn't impossible for the Bucs, and we're going to talk about the consequences of the Bucs furiously trying to come back from 10 points down with a minute to go, I think it's good for the Ravens, just psyche and ending that narrative that when they have a big lead, they tend to find a way to try to blow it, whether they actually do blow it or come close. But still at the end of the day, they only won by 10, but it still didn't feel like they were ever seriously in doubt of winning the game.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. There was one moment where the Bucks cut the lead to 16 and get the 2-point conversion, and you're like, uh-oh, I think it was about 11 minutes left, and you're like, uh-oh, like this might turn into a game, and Baltimore gets the ball on offense, and they drive right down the field. And at that point, they really shut the door, and I know, and, the Bucks go to this 2-minute, they start driving, they're going fast, then they get the onside, which really made the game seem closer. And I think Harbaugh will even get on his team last night because I understand you're up big, but as a secondary and as a defense, you don't want that to happen. You just need to get one stop, and it would have shut the door on Tampa, but it allowed them to kind of stay in the game. And even when they got the ball back, and I'm sure we'll dig into it really deep now, but they get the ball back and they're still going, even though there's no shot to win. I said on there, it was really for fantasy owners that had guys that they needed extra points because at that point, the game was over, but Baker Mayfield and the offense was still moving up and down the field.
And before we get to that specific point, because by then it's a 2-score game, the clock is ticking, the Bucs have no timeouts. They're going to have to score a field goal or a touchdown, recover an onside kick, and then score the touchdown or the field goal, depending upon what they got on the first drive. It felt like it wasn't going to happen. But one criticism I have, when the Ravens made it a 23-point lead, scoring the touchdown after the Bucs cut it to 16, and as you said, maybe we got something here. When the Bucs scored their next touchdown, and they're down 23, so they're going to have to eventually get two-point conversions, and they can get a 7-pointer. When you get that first touchdown, and you go for 2 and you don't get it, you're down 17 still. You need 3 scores. If they'd have just gone for 1, they would have been down 2 scores. And yes, they still have to get 2-pointers at some point, but it's a 2-score game. You got to think of it bigger picture. If you don't get it, it's a 3-score game. If you do get it, it's a 2-score game. And that's what made the rest of it feel academic, Devin. Because how are they going to get the ball 3 more times? How are they going to score 3 more times? If they had just gone for 1, they only needed 2 more times. And the way it played out, if they, and I know that this is a hypothetical, but if they go for 1 and then they scored again and they go for 2, that final drive is to tie. You're down 8. It makes sense at that point to have all your starters out there in the final minute. You pop one play, you get the 2-pointer, you potentially win the game, or at least force overtime. So I don't know that Todd Bowles is working off a chart. I don't think that the analytics would support going for 2 then. I'm always a firm believer. If you can make a 2-score game a 1-score game, do it. If you can make a 3-score game a 2-score game, do it. And they didn't do it in that moment last night.
It is very interesting. I would love to, in the offseason or whatever, get a behind-the-scenes look of how these teams go about all of these situations. Because it seems like now throughout the NFL, if there's an opportunity to make a little sense out of going for 2, they go for 2. And when we watch it, we're like, okay, I understand it. You're like you just said, we're trying to reduce to how many times we need to get the ball to score to win. But then there's other times they do it, and you're like, I'm not really understanding. So I would love to just get a behind the scenes look of a few teams and how they handle analytics. Is it all decided before the game even starts of, hey, when we get in this situation, this is what we're going to do? Or is there somebody that comes on the headset and is talking to these head coaches and saying, hey, coach, this is a situation, and trying to like quickly scramble it out? Because it feels like these decisions are not made the same way each time, and it makes it harder to track. And I know our initial instincts as a player, former player, we think right away when someone goes for two, we're like, oh, it's analytics. They're listening to somebody in their head telling them. But I don't understand. I'm not sure how exactly it works. I know every coach says they use it to a certain extent, but there's more into it. I would love to know what is more involved in how they make these decisions.
I was going to ask you how they did it when you were in New England, but I know the answer. Ernie Adams told Bill what to do.
Yep, we had Ernie. Ernie was awesome.
Just iron Ernie Adams. That's the answer. But that's the thing. There's only one Ernie Adams. What are these other teams doing? And I'm not a big fan of making these decisions ahead of time and being tied to what the chart says, because there are different circumstances over the course of the game. And I think the one thing that gets overlooked, now they were still going to have to get 2 2-pointers last night, because I know I've had coaches explain, well, you have to know how you feel about your remaining 2-point options. Which ones have you used? Which ones do you like? Do you have enough plays that you like? That's a part of it. But I also think, and I'm going to take a liberty here, and I'm going to apologize to London in advance. I think you have to factor in the oh shit factor from the defensive perspective. Okay, we're up 17. Or they were up 17 at that point. They go for one, they go for two, we're still up 15. 16 or 15, who cares? We're still up 2 scores. But when you start to develop momentum and you start to feel like if the offense is clicking and it's getting more interesting and it's getting closer, there's a point where I think, doesn't the defense just start to get a little like, oh, God, they go, oh, my God, they're going to grab more momentum here, and we're kind of on the ropes a little bit. Does that enter the mind of a defensive player when you're just feeling like maybe a little tighter because this play is more impactful as they're starting to make the comeback?
There's no doubt about it. And I think especially when you're moving the ball and it feels like every play is successful, because when that happens, the defensive coordinator is usually like, okay, the blitz isn't working. Let's go to this. Okay, zone's not working. Let's go to man. Okay, man didn't work. So you start to see these defenses use every call they have. And I think that's when you get into the psyche of the coordinator and the player that nothing's working. So I think offenses, when they get that feel, they say, hey, let's just keep going, keep our foot on the gas and keep going. But I do know as a defense and as a player, you used to kind of reset. You understood, and even if you couldn't do all the math in your head while on the field, you always knew if a team was going for 2, you knew it was going to be a chance to maybe change the outcome in the game of just that one play, that 1 2-point conversion. And it's usually a small practice time every week where you went over the team's top 2-point conversions and stuff like that. So you usually knew as a defender, I know it's bad. I know whatever, we just had a long drive or a sudden change, whatever it is. But if we could just get this one stop, it might help us at the end of the game. And that reset usually helps defenses out when they can make that play.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of a regardless of how the math works, if they're going for 2, you're thinking, all right, they really need this. And it's kind of our chance to make amends for giving up the touchdown drive. But even then, if nothing's working and you feel it, you can feel it. The momentum is real. It comes through the TV screen. It comes through the phone if you're watching it on the phone. Clearly in the building, it's just an intangible vibe that emerges. I just think the Bucs should have maybe gotten it to 16 while they could. Worry about the 2-point conversions when you cut it to a potential 1-score game. That I feel like would have had a better chance. Okay. Now, and it would have made what we're about to talk about more understandable when it happened, because right before the Chris Godwin injury, Shereen Williams texted on our PFT writers thread, why is Baker Mayfield still in there? He'd gotten banged around on a sack, and it's like, where and when do you throw in the towel? That really is the question. And I think it was a tough one last night because they pop one long play, they get another onside kick. Maybe in theory, crazier things have happened. It ain't over till it's over. But it felt like it was over. And it felt like the Bucs were just a little too desperate. It was a little too frenetic. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.